Big takeaway from me from Warren unveiling her Medicare for All plan is that her comms team clearly has a contempt for her biggest backers in the media and her more ardent supporters online. This has been proven by her financing plan, which contains an incredibly regressive tax, and where she fooled reporters into thinking she discovered the one cool trick for funding Medicare for All without a middle-class taxes. Likewise, her transition plan is actually a public option with the mere hope of Medicare for All after the midterms. She thinks they are all rubes, yes, including Sham Cedar. Sham Smeeder. Well, let's talk about this. Okay, obviously, I don't know what they think. My understanding, too, is that with regards to Sam, he's, had the appropriate eye roll at this plan. But, look, there's one person in the race who not only cares about Medicare for All, but is the only reason we're even talking about it. There's one person in the race who actually did, in fact, write an incredibly clear bill with, yes, an addendum section of financing options, even if it wasn't technically inside the bill. But it's a 200-something page bill. It clearly delineates the phases that we're going to do this in, and there's ample funding options. First, Elizabeth Warren chose to do a funding mechanism with a regressive head tax. And she also chose to include immigration reform in the package, which, by the way, immigration reform and a broader set of radical changes to immigration, including amnesty, I hate that word, but immediate citizenship to the 15, 20 million people that are here, is absolutely necessary. And of course, Bernie Sanders put out the best immigration plan that everybody's put out, just as he does in every other policy area. But no, I think that the idea that you're going to just include that in the summary of the funding mechanism, like there's going to be an interdependent major policy push, I think that if she wanted to do that, she should have been making that argument for over a year. And that actually might have been really valuable. That might have been great if she included those things together. But just dropping it in the back as a tax predicated on something else happening, no. Politically foolish and ridiculous. And now, of course, she's put out this plan that, look, let's just be blunt here, exactly has that's exactly right. The first phase she's going to push for is something like the Buttigieg-Biden plan. More generous, more robust public option. She is going to try to go back to 2007, 2008 and do the original Jacob Hacker plan, which is the academic at Yale who helped write the concept of the public option. And if you look at the structure of the ACA, which was successful as a patient protection bill of rights and then successful as a Medicaid expansion, besides the Republicans in the Supreme Court. But costs have not gone down. And a major reason costs have not gone down is because the public option was supposed to be that cost buffer, if you go back to the original designs of it, right? So, okay, we all know that if you want to have worse outcomes and you want to have less effective healthcare, you allow the private industry to continue. And we also know that as long as the private industry is out there owning the political process and manipulating, the bureaucracy, that the public option will either be burdened with undesirable, people who are going to end up costing the federal government way more. We know all of the structural problems here. But what it shows is either, I'm tempted to think contempt because I don't think that there's anybody stupid enough to actually think that you can fight what would still, by the way, be an incredibly brutal political war and try and do a public option, and then wait a couple of years and then go for the most ambitious part of Medicare for All in the third year of a presidential term while you're running for re-election. I find it hard to believe that Elizabeth Warren or anybody around her is actually delusional enough to believe that. That's just bluntly what I think. If they are delusional enough to think that, then they're even more dangerous at politics than if they're just being cynical. But I'll quote, Carl Bayer has a good write-up on this. But look, here's what this will do, among other bullet points, if you actually do this two-step delusion. I'm embarrassed we're even talking about this. And by the way, just to be clear too, This is actually, by the way, in some respects, this is worse than what Buttigieg is putting forward. Because Buttigieg will still say rhetorically, and of course I don't believe him because I don't believe anything Buttigieg says. I think Buttigieg is as sincere as his stock photos on his website. But he'll say, if you have this public Medicare for all who want it option, he actually thinks it will grow in popularity and lead to, I mean, it depends how he couches it, but the implication is that it's going to grow in market share because it's better. Now, Elizabeth Warren is saying in 2 years, it will be so overwhelmingly popular that it will be enough for a second major healthcare push to defeat all of them, some of the most powerful interests in the history of the planet during an election year. So again, if they're actually that delusional, then they're deeply dangerous politically, or they're just, being cynical and counting on, a bunch of voters being naive or delusional. But this is important, what Carl Behar says too. It splits the movement along entirely predictable lines that are completely familiar to left organizers. Let's work with the Democrats versus let's hold the line. Undermine the commitment and investment of activists who have reluctantly decided to support bills that are at odds with what they really think needs to happen with healthcare in the United States. Center Warren's first plan as the, quote, reasonable compromise, and second plan as an unnecessary radical instance of Democrats pressing their advantage. Exhaust everyone by picking the second fight. And, there's something there is a huge confusion in this country and in our modern culture of just being in your head and mentally masturbating versus having an intellectual analysis. Here's the truth about healthcare. The most effective system that we could deliver that is on offer as far as human delivery and saving lives and improving health is single payer Medicare for all system. That's the best we have on a policy level. In order to achieving that goal will be a Herculean, gargantuan political undertaking, the likes of which we have probably not seen in modern politics. That is how it might happen. And incidentally, and I would never foreground this, even in the absolute worst case scenario, some type of not as good compromise will still come out of that battle, right? That battle is going to mean millions of people, and it's going to mean a president who sees themselves as an organizer in chief. And that's it. There's literally nothing else to it. There's no secret maneuver. There's no, well, I'm going to call this person and maybe we'll do. No, it's all jerking off. It's all bullshit. This is the best policy. The reason we don't have the best policy is because we have trillion-dollar interests stopping it from happening. They own Congress. It will be a problem in the judiciary. It's a whole other area that I agree with Sham Sheeter that the left better think much more strategically about. It's the right policy. It's stopped because of raw power. The only credible theory of change, that kind of raw power, is the same reason that Marx centered the workers in the supply chain. Yes, Marx was appalled at, and Engels were appalled at sweatshops and labor abuse and everything else. But they also just saw, okay, the capitalists control everything. They control the press. They control the judiciary. They have the law enforcement. They have all of this, of the instruments of the bourgeois state favor them. What do we have that is actual power? Well, if you walk out on a strike, that kind of fucks things up for them. What we have is we have mass numbers of people, and in this case, a literal once-in-a-lifetime presidential candidate who conceives of themselves as a conduit for labor and the working class and the masses versus capital. That's it. Might not work. Might work. Might not work. Literally the only way this could work? Yes. And that's it. Just stop dicking around. I don't, that's the most frustrating part of this, like, whole Warren thing is just the amount of endless mental masturbation. I mean, honestly, even if she was to say, and a major part of her argument is this notion that she has secret bureaucratic abilities. If she just said, I support the bill, I support the timeline, after all, I am a co-sponsor, but hey, trust me, I know how to call people better than Bernie or whatever. At least, I think that, obviously, I think I don't buy that argument for a second, but at least it could be not such Rube Goldberg nonsense that it's undermining the most important healthcare effort we could have, which I have no doubt that she is starting to do with this endless silly machinations. Because look, at the next debate, what's Buttigieg going to say? I mean, we had a couple of debates where, to her credit, she was backing Bernie up rhetorically. Now it's going to be, oh, well, you support exactly what I support. You just don't have, you're just not having the courage enough to be honest. Now, again, I know her supporters, I already anticipate the freak out that some people have. I don't know what she thinks in her head. Maybe Elizabeth Warren and her team, and this will be the last time I say this, but it bears repeating one more time. Maybe they are completely sincere and they believe in this two-step plan and they want to have Medicare for all, to which case I say, wow, that's terrifying how delusional they are. And it's going to be easy pickings in the next debate. Hopefully it will benefit Bernie to be yet another example of him the only person saying it. Hopefully. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.